All right, so I always see people asking about how to get engines unstuck. This is a method I use for ones that are pretty bad. This is a straight 8 Packard motor, 327 cubic inch that I've had for, let's see, probably 5 years now. And I got the whole car, but the car was basically like the motor. I mean, it was just, it'd been sitting in a barn, but it was like it was sitting in a swamp. So everything was rusted. So I'd like to save this motor and put it in a rat rod I want to build. I've got the truck and axles and all that stuff. I just need the motor and transmission. So anyway, I'm wanting to try to see if I can save this motor, and so far from the looks of it, I should be able to save it if I can find the parts and not be crazy expensive. So anyway, what I'm doing here is this is one piston that's pretty solid. The rest of them I've gotten to move. And what I do is I take a mixture of, sometimes I use alcohol, sometimes I use gasoline with a little bit of oil mixed in it to kind of knock the volatility off. This is, probably shouldn't have to say this, but can be dangerous if you're stupid. So take that for what it's worth. So anyway, what I do is I've done this to engines and all kinds of stuff. I've done it to a tractor. It was an old Alice Chalmers B. We pulled the head off of it. It had sat outside for God knows how long. We bought it for a couple $100. Pulled the head off of it, engaged the PTO, and I filled 4 cylinders full of alcohol. It was denatured alcohol. And well, I put like 2 inches in each cylinder and lit it on fire. And I let it sit there and burn for probably a half hour. And once it burned out, we took a pipe wrench and started working the PTO back and forth. And I was able to get it unstuck. And we had that thing running, it was probably within an hour or two of doing that. So this does work on those ones that are really stuck. I just pour it in there, and usually an inch, 2 inch sometimes, and just let it burn, and it kind of gets everything nice and warm. The other key to it, if you're doing what I've done, I've had to pull the crank out of this engine. This engine's been sitting for, I would say, at least 40 years. So what I do is I've got a chunk of aluminum that I turned in a lathe that just barely slides down inside the cylinder bores. And what I'm doing is I'm wanting to make sure I get even pressure across the whole piston, not just in one spot. Like if you're using a punch or a block of wood or whatever, I use that aluminum to fill the whole cylinder and cover the whole piston. That way I'm spreading the force out evenly, and I'm also keeping the ring lands over here from busting. You know, I don't want to use the rings and bust the top of the piston. So that's what I'm doing. So anyway, let's try to see if we can get this. Let's see if we can get this damn piston here to move. So I thought it moved earlier, but I wasn't sure. Well, there it went. All right, well, there it went. It freed up. Sure did. So all 8 are free. So I should be able to save this motor. The crank ain't bad. The Bearings aren't bad. Well, I'll probably put new bearings in it anyway, but the bearings aren't bad. Of course, I got to check the block over for cracks. Hey, like that hammer handle. See that? That's one of them hammers nobody will steal. No one wants to steal a hammer they don't want to use. No one wants to use that old rebar handle, but I use it all the time. Alright, so they're all free. I've soaked this engine the whole time I got it. The day the car rolled in my lot, it was hauled in by a customer, basically a freebie car, and he just said, "Here you go, have fun." So from that day, I filled the cylinders full of transmission fluid, diesel fuel, this, that, whatever, and I've done it over the last 4 years, and still was unable to get the pistons to move. I was able to get number 8 without any issues, and then the rest of them, I just put the slug in there and beat on it, and I was able to get the rest of them loose. Now, a lot of people are going to wonder how the cylinders look, and honestly, some of those cylinders are going to clean up, but it's probably going to have to get bored, which goes into the cost of pistons, you know. I can spend the money and bore it, sleeve it, put it back to stock, and use the pistons I have. I have 2 sets of pistons because the whole car come with a few extra parts. Or I can bore it, buy pistons and all that stuff. Or I can even, you know, if I can't find the Packard pistons, I could actually probably find some pistons of something else that are the size I want or close to, and bore it to those pistons, as long as the rod and piston length is what I need for the deck height. So I will figure that out once I get the cam and lifters out of it. That's next. I did get the cam to rotate about 1 inch, so we'll see how that goes whenever I get it up high enough for me to get to messing with, and I'll probably see if I can't pry the valves up, stick something under the valves with the engine upside down, and then pull the cam out and then let the lifters all fall out. That way it'll take the load off the lifters, so I will see how that goes. But so far so good. The engine is I don't know, it may live. It may live. I hope so. This will be a cool ass rat rod. So anyway, that's my little way of getting shit unstuck.